Hey everyone, it's Chaitni. Today I'm talking to all of you quiet overthinkers out there. You're the guys who are constantly replaying a conversation that happened yesterday, analyzing what you said at that meeting, really delving into your thoughts and being unsure about your choices that you're going to make tomorrow when tomorrow hasn't even arrived. I just want you to know if overthinking is something that you do, you're not alone. So in this week's video, we're going to be addressing that and also coming up with some solutions to all that overthinking. On the flip side, if you are the quiet overthinker, you're probably very, very careful, you're very thoughtful, pretty detail oriented to the point of being over prepared, but all of that really leaves you feeling unsure and a lot of times just exhausted from all of that preparation and all of that overthinking. So that's why I'm covering this today. This is directly for all of you quiet overthinkers. So here's what I see in a lot of my clients who identify as being overthinkers or overthinking. And one of the things that I see them tell me a lot of times is that they replay conversations over and over again, even though they took place yesterday or, a few days ago. They also tend to overanalyze and second guess all of their choices, whether it's what they had for their meal or the way they responded to a certain text. And they often feel drained, just mentally exhausted, which translates into physical exhaustion, even though they haven't really done much. But all that thinking is obviously going to have an impact on you emotionally, mentally, and physically. So why does this happen? Why does overthinking even happen? It's really a coping mechanism to address any kind of uncertainty and to feel like you're in control. It's a lot easier to fathom every kind of outcome, every kind of possible scenario and be prepared for it instead of dealing with any kind of uncertainty that's uncomfortable, that's unwelcome. So on the flip side, what you do to cope with that is you overthink. And a lot of times this stems just from past experiences. It could be your childhood, it could be what you have been through previously. And if you were in a situation where you had to be hyper aware, you had to be vigilant and be on your toes of whether it was managing other people's emotions or just never knowing what the situation entailed and having that kind of uncertainty, you are probably more prone to overthinking. And overthinking, it keeps you busy, but it doesn't necessarily move you forward. So now that you understand why some of this overthinking happens, how it looks like, I want to go into how you can shift that mindset from overthinking to actually doing and not just being stuck in this cycle of having these thoughts that aren't necessarily translating into actions. Okay, suggestion number one is name it to address it. What that simply means is when you start to notice that your thoughts are overwhelming and that you're really getting deep into those thoughts, just name them. Address them, acknowledge them. A lot of times when you give them a name and when you identify them, it takes the emotional charge out of it. And the reason this works is, when the thoughts are swirling in your head, they feel very large and looming and out of control. But when you name them, when you identify them, they start to shrink in size and in shape, and you really get an understanding of what's really going on. So, it may seem like if you are feeling really anxious about something, your thought might be, I'm starting to feel anxious about this upcoming meeting because yada, 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 whatever your reason is. Or it might be, I'm really scared about flying on the plane with everything that's been happening. Or I am really unsure about going on this trip on my own. So it could be different things, but it really helps to start naming that emotion. And what that does is it gives you an explanation of what you're feeling and why you're feeling that way, because there's no real change without that awareness. Okay, suggestion number two is implement a 5-minute decision rule. Overthinkers tend to mull over a decision a lot. The smallest of decisions turn into something really big, and they tend to be blown out of proportion and take up a little too much of your time and energy. So for those decisions that are more or less inconsequential and have small impacts, just set a 5-minute timer. If you need to do that on your phone, do it on your phone. Within those 5 minutes, you make a decision. It could be some examples are picking the meal that you want to have, or trying to figure out which movie or which TV show you want to watch, trying to figure out whether you really want to respond to that text or call that person back. Just simple things like that. Start to make it easier for yourself. Those don't need to be complicated. Those don't require a ton of research. They don't require a lot of back and forth on your mind, and they don't need to stress you out unnecessarily. So put the 5 minutes on, make a decision, and just roll with it. It's probably not going to be perfect, but that's okay. That's how you learn. That's how you learn to trust yourself even more. Is okay, when you mess up, you know how to do things differently, and you start to develop a much stronger relationship with yourself, and you start to make better decisions in the long run. So just remember, the smaller inconsequential things, they don't need that much of your time. 5 minutes and that's it. It's yay or nay. Suggestion 3 is create a thinking time. Schedule it into your day. It could be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is that you need initially. What this is time that you set aside to overthink. Because the more you tell yourself, don't overthink, don't overthink, don't overthink, what do you think is going to happen? You're probably going to overthink. And that's going to stress you out even more, because you're trying very hard not to overthink, but you are still overthinking. And it's just this awful loop. So initially, set aside some time in your day. It could be maybe right after lunch, maybe it's in the evening after you come home from work. Try not to do it around your bedtime, because it might keep you up. So pick a time slot, put it on your calendar, set a reminder on your phone, and just go ahead and do your thinking. It's even better if you can get it out of your system. So maybe you do brain dump and you just write down your thoughts. They don't need to be coherent. They don't need to make sense. They could be bullet points. They could be words. They could be full sentences. You can journal, whatever you want to do. Just get it off your chest. You can talk to someone about it. Sometimes, writing is just, it's not in the wheelhouse. We don't feel like doing it. That's all right. Leave yourself a voice note. Just go ahead, just babble, just get it all out of your system. And see how you feel. You're going to feel a lot lighter. You're going to feel like you have a little bit more headspace than you did to begin with. So that's definitely one of the things you can do, is set aside a finite time to just take your time and overthink. And then the last suggestion is ending your day with mental decluttering. It's a 3-step process. And it really helps you set some boundaries with your inner critic, and helps you shut down all that noise that you're dealing with. So the way this works is, step 1 is you write down 3 things that you did really well or that you followed up on. Maybe you needed to do something for job hunting, and you started looking at possible ways to update your resume. Or maybe you just took a peek at LinkedIn to see which jobs were available. So whatever little bit that you did, just remember, it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be colossal, it doesn't have to be life-changing. But any 3 things that you did well, that you followed through on, you write them down. Once you do that, you think of one thing that you can maybe handle differently the following day, and do that without judgment, do it without shame. Maybe you weren't able to have something healthy as a snack. Maybe you gave into your craving for a chocolate bar, or for that for that coffee from Starbucks, which was full of cream, sugar, and all of that good stuff. And maybe that's something that you don't want to do. So how can you do that a little bit differently? So make a note of that. What can you change? Something small, something that's doable, something that's realistic. And then the last thing that you're going to do is just, go ahead and say something kind to yourself. It could be anything. It could be something like, I did the best I could, and that's okay. Or it could be, I don't need to have all of this figured out right now. Or, tomorrow is going to be a good day somehow. Somehow, some way, it's going to happen. So find that one affirmation or one sentence, something that you can put that could put you at a little bit of ease. Because what happens, especially at the end of the day for overthinkers, you tend to feel like you didn't do enough, you could have done this better, you wasted your time, you were procrastinating, you could have been more productive, you could have done this, you should have done that. It is just so much pressure, and then again starts that loop. It goes on and on and on. So in order to put that boundary in place, to say, all right, it's time to wrap things up, it's time to kind of empty out that brain and try to get some sleep and be at peace, this is something you can do. Again, it's 3 steps. You start with 3 things you did well, you figure out one thing that you might do differently or a little bit better the next day, and then the 3rd thing is, you come up with that one affirmation that leaves you feeling like, all right, this is the pause, this is the demarcation, it's time to get some rest, and it's time to shut all of this overthinking down. So that pretty much wraps it up. Overthinking might feel like your default, but it doesn't have to be. Just take one of these small steps. I would say the easiest one to do is the one at night, or you can even set aside that time for overthinking, but whichever one resonated with you, pick one and start to do it on a consistent basis, and then you can build on it. Overthinking is not your default. It's not anybody's default. You can always change that, even if it feels like it. So just start with something simple and then build on it. This is something that I deal with a lot with my clients. So if you have any questions about overthinking, or if you have any inquiries or just curiosity on some other things that you're trying that may or may not be working, feel free to reach out. I'd be more than happy to help you. And thank you always for stopping by. Have a wonderful week, and I will catch you here very soon. Thank you.